Um, so today I'm going to be painting the eye, and very first thing I'll do is kind of go over the palette. So I've extended it a little bit from what we normally use. Not that much, I've just added green. So this is pretty close to the palette that we've been doing in the portrait classes. So starting with the titanium white at the top, Naples yellow, raw sienna, transparent red oxide. So when you're drawing the shape of the eye, you're looking at the eyelid, but I was also thinking about the bottom plane of that top lid and the top plane of the bottom lid. So I just included a little bit of thickness to show that. You can see it very clearly in this photo since it's been blown up. And then what I'm going to do today is really kind of think about my forms. So I want to, again, accentuate the roundness of the eye, which is what the eyeball is. It's a round sphere, and then the lids wrap around that sphere. Okay, now I can start thinking about modeling the form. So think about how the eye socket turns right here. You have this turning of the plane as it moves in towards the eyeball. So here again, we have a very firm edge. So when I start, if I did do any blending, I would do a very slight blend there. I wouldn't obliterate that edge because that is a cast shadow. Okay, so here we have a nice little change of color. So you have the front plane of the eyelid, and then when you step down into the bottom plane, you're getting back into some of that orange hue. You see that? And I'm just going to try to throw it in kind of as a general color, and then I'll adjust it. And I can just go in here and there and soften some of the edges. I have enough paint on the surface now that I can start to do that. But you can't do that really until you've built your paint up. Okay, so looking at the eyeball, the white part of the eye, we look at that, we notice that that is really not white at all. Even the light side has a little bit of blue and has a little bit of sort of a orange or pinkish hue in it. The eyeball, part of it's the light, but you also have blood vessels in your eye. So very, very rarely, unless you're looking at a really strong highlight, will the eye actually appear perfectly white. Trying to work around some of these edges, but I'm not worried about it being perfect. This is actually a slightly soft edge right here anyway. And this is something else you want to be careful of, is you don't make things razor sharp. Even an edge which is a firm edge, you can still see there's a transition of that into the eyeball. This is probably a little bit harder here, so I might leave that a little bit crisper. And I think there's a little translucency to the eyeball too, so you tend to see some of those warmer colors because you're actually seeing the blood vessels coming through. So I'm just throwing it in as a general color. Now I want to look at the transition within that. So as I said before, you kind of go with something that's very general, and then when you get to the stage where you're ready to start modeling the form, you can make your adjustments. So my general color I think is pretty close. It's picking up some of this, but then I can see that this gets even darker. So I'm going to use my raw umber and create a slightly darker value. So when I'm looking at the lid, one thing that I really want to pay attention to is this tonal variation right beneath the upper eyelid. So here it almost creates a little bit of a shadow. And then as you come into the lower portion of the iris, you're picking up more reflective light. So getting that transition is going to really help to make the eyelid look like it's sitting on top of the eyeball. Right now it looks very flat. And I'm going to paint that in right below the upper eyelid. The thing that's tricky too with this is that everything is in a very close value range. So a lot of these subtle differences, can't really show them with value, you have to show them with hue. So something else I'm looking at is a little bit of a cool transition right here. And this edge, right now, this is way too sharp. Like there's actually a softness in the edge of the iris into the white of the eye, on all sides really. If I make it too sharp, it just looks very cut out and not natural. Almost a violet there, slight coolness. And I'm just gonna go in right along the edge really and soften that. I really like that cool cast. That actually gives some nice cool color to this painting. You know, this right now is very, very cut out, so I'd probably try to address that before I moved on. You know, this value gets much darker, so I'm gonna do some of that right now, just because I'm seeing it, and it's an easy enough adjustment to make. So that gets very, very dark. Right there. And then I can also soften this edge a bit more, like again, kind of going back to the idea of nothing is really razor sharp. Now this is really one of the hardest things probably in painting, is getting that play of the edges. Because the edges are going to help so much to make things look more natural. And even as I come around this side, I could probably add more of that darkness. It's just a little too light to begin with.